today I want to explain my V9 brand engine. This is simply 1 to 9 steps, starting from absolutely nothing, so value creation, right the way up, getting your visual, your verbal right, getting a verifiable business, testing the market, all the way up to what's your vision, what do you want to align your brand and what your virtues are within the market. That's 9 steps we're going to go through today, and they break down into 3 sections. Just to explain quickly, you've got the stamina phase, you've got the systems phase, and you've got the strategy phase. Now, steps 1 to 4 are here, steps 5 to 7 are here, and then 8 and 9 are here. Sometimes they bounce around, sometimes they change. Sometimes a business is really good at one thing and not good at another. But if you were doing it from grassroots, ground up, the way I'm talking you through it now would be how I do it. Now, why should you listen to me? Well, I've spent the last 15 years as a brand consultant, and I've worked on big brands, small brands, little brands no one's ever heard of. And over the years, I've started to notice a few patterns, and this is one of them. So stick around to the end. I guarantee you'll learn something that you can action in your brand today. We're going to have a bit of fun. Not going to be too crazy on the old editing and stuff. We're just going to get into it. So number 1 would be the first V of the 9 Vs, if you haven't worked that out, is value creation. I have a little mnemonic to help me articulate what I'm doing here, which is CAPS. That stands for conditions, actions, priority, and then solution. Every stage from 1 to 9, there's going to be some conditions for success, some actions you can take, things to prioritize, and a quick solution that you can take away with today and maybe try and action in your business. Cool? So, value creation. This is essentially the conditions here is where your motivation meets the market. Now, what does that mean? So, if you started out building a brand or building a business, whatever terminology you want to use, often the first couple of goes, we just sort of do what we want, or we build something that we think the market wants. We go, we build all the things, we do the logos, we do the website, and there's no demand and no one really wants it. And I've personally done that a lot. That's how most of my early side hustle started and then immediately failed. And I think it's really important to understand that what the market wants is not always what you think it is. But if you're going to go the distance, you really do have to be motivated to solve the problem. So for instance, if you just suddenly found a problem that you don't really care about and you notice a gap in the market, yeah, fine. If you're super entrepreneurially spirited, then you can just crack on and do it. But personally, I think that you've got to be motivated to find that. So there's got to be something that you're passionate about, something that you care about, something that you actually want to maybe change or want to work on, because it's going to be, we've got 9 steps here. It's going to take some time. The main idea here on actions is you want to talk to the niche that you want to pursue, or the people that you want to help, or the problem you want to sort of understand better, because the main priority in this section is to find a problem that you can solve. And that is essentially what business is finding a problem that you can solve for somebody else and charging money for it. That is essentially as simple as I can put business. And that is your priority number 1, really. Also, as an extra bonus, the solution that will help you along this process is who are you uniquely positioned to serve? So there's a Stevie Wonder track called Yes to You. And in that track, it's basically talking about you yesterday, essentially. So you yesterday is essentially the best person that you can solve for, because you understand what they went through. You understand their trials, their tribulations, you understand the pain points because you've lived the experience. There's a thing, just quickly, I'm going to mention this a lot, so it's good to talk about it. So there's a thing called the 4 L's that I came up with just to help frame anything, which is live, look, listen, learn. And that is live the experience, look at the data, listen to your customer, or learn from the market. Basically, with those 4 L's, you can solve any problem. So if you apply that to value creation, you should hopefully find something valuable, a problem that you can solve. That is the main objective here. Okay. So after we've found a potential problem we've solved, value creation, the next would be to validate. Essentially, for validation, what that means is where assumptions, let's do our CAPS, sorry, C-A-P-S. So the conditions would be where our assumptions meet feedback. Now, this is really important because we're going to make a lot of hypotheses. We're going to do a lot of like, what about this? What about that? What about this? Oh, they want to do this. Oh, they want to do that. I think that they want it solved like this. And then we're going to kind of write that in a document, almost as a kind of low-key MVP business plan. And then we're going to go and talk to people, get people to fill in forms or run surveys, get on a call, do talk to customer, do discovery. What's going to happen is you're going to have to slightly pivot. You're going to think you're solving this, where actually, maybe, you're going to aim at that, where actually they need you to maybe do that. So it's going to require a slight reposition over here, a slight re-aiming, slight understanding, and that's only going to come from validating what you want to solve. A very simple way to do this is essentially your priority is to almost create an MVP. And now we're not saying you have to go off and make a product. You don't have to go off and do that. It can be a wait list. It can be, as I said, form. It can be you can send people to a landing page with a little VSL. We've all done that, where you just talk through the points, and then would you like to find out more? Would you like to join the wait list? Would you like to claim your spot? You can add a little bit of scarcity if you want to. That would be a very simple way to begin to validate. And if people click through, maybe you're going to run an ad to it. Maybe you're just going to send it to friends and family maybe. Whatever you need to do to test it, I would do that. And then a quick solution to take away. So here, because no one really knows that you're good at it. You don't really know if you're the best at solving this problem yet. Do you want to reduce as much perceived risk as possible? Essentially, you want to take away any objections they have. And the best way to do that is maybe do a few for free, work out the process, and then find all the touch points and then map it. So I'm going to keep this bit here. In the stamina phase, you've now got a bit of value creation. You understand, you found a problem you can solve. You validated it. You've got a wait list, or you've got something where a few people have DM'd you or said, hey, look, I want this. Your next one is that you want to become verifiable. Now, that just means essentially people need to know that you're an expert. That's a real easy way to do it. So let's do our CAPS again. Our conditions is where our competence meets our trustworthiness. I think there's a clear difference between trustworthiness and trust. Obviously, trustworthiness is worthy of trust. I think trust is thrown around a lot, but for instance, I'm trusting this chair not to break because I'm sat on it. I'm trusting that my next door neighbor isn't going to burst in his underwear. Trust in society is quite almost expected. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to do all exist so closely on top of each other. Whereas trustworthiness means that there is a level of proof, and there's a level of almost the competence has been proved and it's verifiable, which means you're on your way to becoming an expert. So actions for that is you've created a little bit of demand here. Now you want to supply that demand. So supply the demand. And you want to do that almost, hopefully you've chosen like almost a very simple, well, not so simple, but a single problem that you're solving really, really well completely. You've gone out, you've validated, you've got demand. Now you've got some competence, you've got some, you've become trustworthy, you're supplying the demand, you're winning, and you're asking for reviews. You're starting to build case studies. Case studies are a great one. You've maybe even got, if you're a service business, maybe you've got a portfolio, maybe you're writing on your website, you're starting to post content, you're starting to do all that kind of thing. You're starting to begin to look like an expert on the internet. The priority here is to build credibility and reputation. And a quick way of doing this would just be to social medias, your network, cold outreach, and I guess you could start doing ads, community. There's loads of things. Okay, so now it's all about visibility. So let's do caps. People need to know that you exist. So the conditions for success is where you turn. So conditions, you want to turn awareness into sales for customers. So the actions you want to take here is obviously outreach. You want to do some ads. You want to get in a room with people. Basically widen that segment. So you found, so here's the market. You found a segment of the market that you can serve. Now, what you want to do is rather than widen it like this, you actually want to widen it like this, which is key. So there's all these people that if you widen the lens, you can serve without having to worry about this part of the market. This is your niche, this is your position. So it's a rinse and repeat. That's sort of what you want to do. Leads and sales. And there are many people on the internet that will talk about that forever. A solution you can take today, I think testimonials for like low ticket stuff, and then case study for high ticket stuff. More agency side, so if you're a service business and you're contracting in, this will do better. If it's like 10 grand, if it's low level stuff, testimonials will be fine. And then there's like a in between of the two. I prefer the case study idea, and then I just have a couple of testimonials here. In my business, obviously I'm a brand consultant, so I work mostly with agencies. So sometimes people don't want the world to know that I did the work for them, and you kind of buy that NDA, so on and so forth. So certain markets are different, whereas case studies where I talk about the work, that's sort of, in my portfolio, in my discovery call, that kind of thing. That's visibility. And that is the last, that will be the first 4 stages of the stamina phase, which is where most people fail, to be honest. I've failed there a lot because it requires a lot of pushback. It requires a lot of being wrong and asking silly questions that maybe you don't want to always ask. It requires you to have a lot of stamina, for want of a better phrase. That's why I named it stamina. The next phase is systems. So if you've got to this part in your business and building your brand, you've got loads of random systems that will be really janky, really horrible. There'll be, it might be you have a couple of scripts, you might have a couple of DMs, you might have a couple of email templates, you might have maybe a couple of decks for pitching that have started to emerge. Maybe you've got an end-to-end process that's starting to observe, an onboarding process, maybe that kind of thing. The next one is to get viable. Now, viable is a bit of an annoying word. What you really want to do is you want to remember that only successful brands emerge from successful businesses. If you don't make it profitable as a business, then you're never going to be able to go to a band to become a brand. And systems is the way you're going to do that. Now, let's do our caps. So the conditions here are where systems meet scale. Because the only way you're going to be able to get more customers, the only way you're going to be able to serve more people, solve the same problem in the wider segment, is if you have systems. Otherwise, it's just not going to work. So at this stage, an action is essentially you need to understand your resources. So there's finite resources such as time and energy, and then other resources if you've got money, capital, whatever. Now, it's important to understand that essentially everything boils down to inputs and outputs. So your priority here is to understand the cost of value at price at scale. So how much does it cost you to deliver the value, aka solve the problem? And what price are you charging it? And how scalable is that offer? So if it's done for you, then you can maybe look at keeping the value high and the price low, because you can maybe use leverage of labor, overseas talent, and then that's scalable. So it costs you very little to fulfill it. If it's done with you, which would typically have a higher ticket price, then if it's if you're in the room, then that becomes hard to scale. That becomes harder to do things because there's only you, and then you have to train, and then there's ops and stuff. So you would have to really increase the price so that the value's still good, and that so because it costs quite a lot, which is harder to scale. So, if, for instance, a service business, my business is very annoyingly hard to scale. And then the DIY, which is probably the most one, which is if you're, for instance, selling a course or a service or a box or a knitting kit or a flat pack furniture, whatever it is, then you can optimize that cost. So by optimizing the supply chain, breaking everything down into like find forest, chop wood, send to factory, cut wood, paint wood, box, assemble, ship, all the way along, and break it down to as many simple parts as you can, and then those can be maxed out with efficiency. That would be how you can become a viable business. And this takes time. Honestly, like this is hard to do because you want to be profitable, and you want to be profitable long term. You want to become predictably profitable is the best phrase I can put it, which means you might have to do a few tax returns over the years. So it might take a couple of years. I know MMR is big at the moment, but so I would allow almost 12 months to 2 years for this section, which I know is mental. So yeah, just to end on that, a solution would be find inputs that have disproportionate outputs, which for want of a better phrase, automation. Use make.com and you create a little lead getter. You have a little ad here that collects all the leads, and then it puts them on the call, and then the call is transcribed, and then that transcription goes to your sales team, and then that sales team calls them up, or whatever. That would be an input, and then once that's in place, that's disproportionate outputs because it can just go and run, and then you'll hit your constraint of the business because you have too many leads that you can't deal with it, that kind of thing. So that would be the viability aspect of it, which is a lot more of the business side, and there are much more qualified people out there that just look at the business side of things, but I have a holistic approach to branding and business, and I think that all of these, value creation right the way through, what's that promise that you're solving, and then keep iterating it on. I think you can really build a cohesive brand that way. I'm doing it. I like doing stuff coming in as a sort of a mercenary, but with a missionary mentality and helping because I genuinely care. But then there are some people that are just excellent at this or excellent at that, or run businesses that are a lot more ops sides, so they just are bang on the viable business side of things. My background is from graphic design into branding into the business of branding and creativity, and then that marketing side of things. Oh, my light just turned off. Lighting. Let me see if I can turn that on. Look at the technology we're working with here. Okay, so next we want to talk about the verbal side. My lighter has died. So what you're going to find out here, cats, is where language meets outcomes. So you're going to realize essentially that when you talk to certain people in certain ways, certain things happen. So when you use a certain word, your sales increase, or when you use a certain framing, or when you articulate the problem. Say you go on a podcast and you're talking to the guy and you say, well, let me tell you a story. Do a Simon Sinek and kind of be like, when I was doing this, I found that if I did X, I got Y, and then that allowed me to do Z. And I found that that was something that resonated with the customers. And what you're beginning to do is, rather than having a more of a operational side of copy where it's sort of like a simple value prop, like I help X achieve Y by doing Z or whatever. And there's lots of value props you can go for, lots of formats that roughly boil down to that. And yes, you can plug and play that and you've found the message and your service is great. Obviously, you've got a promise that you're achieving and you've got a great thing you're doing there, which is important. You can't have a shit offer. You won't get here if you've got a shit product. But then this is all about how you're beginning to package it. So you can then start to use a bit more persuasive language, and this will become part of the system. You will then realize that when I'm talking to this person, actually this objection is the main objection that I have to overcome, or this certain set of people are always struggling on this thing, so we need to say that up front so that makes them a lot more likely to buy, or a lot more likely to finish or achieve their goals, or get the outcomes they wanted, whatever the problem is. You'll start to understand all of this, and then you want to build a verbal way of talking, so you can almost like elevator pitches, scripts, what that looks like on your website, the content design, how you lead people through the problem, your sales deck, if you're talking in public, if you're doing discovery calls, all this stuff. When people seem really articulate, it's because they've rehearsed it a lot. They know what they're talking about because they know their product through and through. Like when you watch Jeff Bezos talk about his, time at Amazon, he's just so dialed because he said these words to inspire his team. He's grown a business. When Elon Musk is talking, like he said these words so many times that there is a level of competency and he knows what hits. Just like a joke, if a comedian writes a joke, they work out, oh, if I pause here and then they laugh, and then if I do this expression here, it's a very similar thing. Actions here are to, as I mentioned, do scripts, content design, story, and then a little bit of tone of voice, maybe how you operate, maybe how you show up. You start to talk in the same way. Maybe if you're writing on socials, you might have written a very incoherent style. Maybe you've got people writing it. You want to kind of unify that so it feels like it's a one voice. Your priority here is to communicate your uniqueness to the market. Now, that also means that you might have a unique way of articulating that, and that's important. You want to begin to get very fluent in the way you're talking. And a good way to do that actually is record yourself talking. So get someone in your team to interview you, get someone in your team to sort of record you talking about your business, and that'll really help you understand like how fluent you are at talking about your company, really. Right, next one. Hope you're still with me. So after you've done your verbal, we're going to do visual. Graphic design, branding people. This is usually what we spend most of our time on, and we neglect all that, and we just do a lovely logo and lovely brand guidelines and come up with stuff that no one wants and solves no problems. Anyway, the important thing about this system is you want to build, so let's do caps again. So the conditions here is where functional meets expressive. If you've watched any of my videos before, I believe everything can be solved on a sliding scale. It's a lot easier to sell to people when you're doing visual stuff if you've got like functional stuff here, because it has to be like that. So it's just very much content design, logo top right, H1, H2, H3, landing page above the fold, blah, 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 email marketing, person, brand property, all those things that you keep going on about that you would use in the guidelines. And then over here, maybe it gets a bit more playful. So you start to be a lot more, you start to push the brand. So maybe there's the brand property comes to the forefront. Maybe the photography works harder. Maybe it's, we get a bit bolder with our text. So when you're selling people on that brand in general, even if it's your team, even if it's yourself, it's a lot easier to basically find where people say when. It's usually around 6 or 7 in my experience. The action here is you want to make guidelines. You want to have cheat sheets. So just like, what's the color? What's the hex code? What's this code? What do we do? Where's the font? Blah, blah, blah. I would prioritize. So I call it a keep, kill, craft method, which is sort of analysis. People might call it, people do SWOT. You can do SWOT if you know how to do SWOT. But I would just do an audit of all the work, what's working, what worked in the ads, what worked in the comms, what kind of just get data again, 4 L's, like I mentioned before, 4 L's. And then as a general rule, I would avoid rules and I'd optimize for best practices. Basically, I've written so many guidelines in my time and been on so many teams. The guidelines never really get listened to, especially if they're very rule-based. If they're actually more of a kind of expose of the best usage of the guides. So the guidelines itself, in and of itself, is almost an expression of the brand, like a brand book, like a 30-page light brand book. That, in my opinion, has a lot more efficiency. And maybe there's literally like a page at the back that just says this size, not this and the other. A lot of people sell very functional, boring guidelines where it's literally like I've done like 140-page guidelines, but there is a time and a place. That was for a really big company. Ideally, you want a 30-page guideline, and it's just telling the story. Why we do this, why we do that. We don't, this is how we talk. And then maybe right at the end, there's just a don't do that, don't do this, don't do this, do this. And you just want to really show off the brand. So you want to do the logo, how you use it, crops, photography, your people, your culture, do application stuff, in situ stuff, out of homes, so advertising, all the kind of stuff. And everyone loves a bloody bag. Do that kind of stuff to inspire rather than to like nail it down, because otherwise they'll just stop listening to you. And kill. And thus endeth the systems phase. I could go on and on and on about those kind of systems. You could really break a lot of things down into viability, the verbal, where you verbalize it, and the visual side of things. But to keep things fun, we're going to move on. So the next one is vision. Now we're into strategy. Just to recap, in the stamina phase, we started with value creation. Then we went to validate it and find out if there was a demand. Then we supplied the demand by becoming verifiable. We did our job well and we recorded it. Now we wanted to be then visible, so we told people about it. We shared content, we ran ads, we got landing pages, we sent traffic, we did everything that we needed to do. This worked. Now we wanted to go through, in the systems phase, we wanted to become viable. So we wanted to go through all of those things and begin to build out systems to understand why this works, why this doesn't. Do we need that? Do we need that feature? What if we talk about this benefit? Blah, 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 blah. Next, in the verbal side of things, we might understand that we can position things with our language, the way we talk about things, the way we craft an offer, the way we sell the script, the way we increase the gap between where someone is and where they want to be, and what's in the way. If we make the hurdle that they have to get over taller, or maybe we bring it down because we're going to chaperone them. Whatever story, certain things will resonate with certain markets differently. And then the visual, we want to make sure we're in a cohesive ecosystem, that people know where they are. When they land there, they are, like if they land on that landing page from an ad, it looks like where they came from. They want to clarify where you come from, that people get what you're doing. So if they look at your LinkedIn profile and they look at your website, it feels like it's from the same thing. Otherwise, it's going to, murkiness makes people not want to trust you, essentially, and people need to trust you. So now vision. What will happen here is, if you've got this far, then now you've got a pretty kicking business. And there'll be two phases that appear. You can either keep going, and one might call this a cash cow, or you can essentially grow, which means you want to consolidate all of your assets to grow. This is kind of called growth phase before takeoff, basically to become a mature company. Now, this would probably be like a lifestyle business. You would just keep going, max it out. Maybe you want to go off and do something else. Maybe at this point you actually want to sell it and get out. That's people exit the company around about here usually. Or you want to bring new talent in. Maybe it's time to get rid of some old talent. That would mean that you want to go through everything and then you want to grow, which requires two different kinds of approaches. Here is, so how much future you want to change. Here is how much you want to keep the present the same. So it becomes very much about vision. And when we're in the vision phase, let's do our caps. So the conditions is where our purpose meets the size of the problem, or the problem size. So originally when we started, it might have just been to make money. Originally when Facebook started, it was to rate girls or to find out if they're single. Then eventually you might realize that you draw immense worth and purpose from helping people. And it might be about building a really solid business to help your local community. And Facebook, for instance, then became about helping universities. So their mission was changing, their vision was changing as the problem size was getting bigger. And yet, in post-rationalization, I'm sure Mark Zuckerberg would say he always had the same idea, but he didn't. And the reason why Facebook is so gigantic now is because their purpose was to, connect the world, solve human connection, bring people together. We can argue whether or not they did that or not, but that's essentially what they did. And some people don't want to follow you on that journey. So it's really important to understand what you want to achieve, what your purpose you want to do. There's lots of workshops you can do for that. I run a lot of workshops to help people do that. The main vision here is often a lot of redefinitions. So you're redefining the culture, where we're going, what we want to achieve, and who we're for, and everything in between. The main priority here is to get clarity and direction, which will require C-suite stuff, lots of workshops, lots of chatting, lots of decks. It's fun, as long as there's a bit of time. Usually there's never enough time to do anything. But that could be a lot of fun, really recrafting that message, looking at the business. And if you've built a business like this, then you can test all this stuff internally and you have a bit of resources to do it. I wouldn't really worry about strategy in the early phases. Get a business going, solve a problem, that's your strategy. Solve a problem for somebody that you care about, make a promise and keep it. And then find out how to deliver on that promise better and better and better at scale for more and more people. And then maybe when you get to the strategy phase, that promise might widen. You might get rid of some of the bit of the promise. The promise might evolve into, as you evolve or as your company evolves, the market might evolve. You might have to recalibrate some things. So is used a lot of recalibration, a lot of redefining, a lot of re-engineering, and maybe even rediscovering. Without that, it's tricky to go anywhere long term, because what will happen is you get silos. If you're watching this video to the end and you understand this, the easiest one is between product and sales. They'll have their own culture, they'll have their own ideas, they'll have their own ways, and obviously sales, you've got marketing on that. The design department, you'll have all these silos popping up because people are starting to execute their job and they're starting to make their things more efficient, but people are making themselves more efficient over here and over here and over here and over here, and they're not really unified. And specifically, probably visually, verbally, definitely, they might deal with people in different ways. Yes, they might be viable, but they might not have the same vision, meaning that they're doing different things. And you want to watch that. This is actually my sort of area of specialities, companies consolidating for growth phase. I especially SaaS. I really enjoy this phase. I really understand this phase. I've done this phase quite a lot. This is where vision is needed. Down here, you don't need it. You just need to work hard. This phase, you want to know your this, not that. So your positioning, it's not them. Not them. That's your like tribe and your culture. You want to go this to that, which is where we're going. And then like this, which is your values. It's a really like quick mnemonic, which is sort of in my ecosystem of how I process things. Everything is a sliding scale from this to that. Okay, and the final one in the V9 brand process is virtue. So CAPS. The most important thing here is where association meets aspiration. Now all that matters is that you associate with the right ideas, you associate with the right virtues. So there's loads of virtues, but let's just say you care about kindness, inclusivity, equal opportunities, not outcomes. You believe in confidence. You believe in a bias towards action. You believe in why not energy. I'm just lifting off stuff from my own brand. Why not energy? All these kind of ideas, or these virtues, can help you tell a story, and they can help you position yourself in the market. That's what Nike does. That's what aspiration means. They have an aspirational idea and they associate it with somebody. So they associate trying the best and working hard with Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan or Kaepernick and all that kind of thing. So the main goal here is to reinforce your brand values. So you're reinforcing everything you're talking about over here, all the values you're delivering over here. You're widening that segment, maybe even entering new markets. So you want to maybe use some people that are iconic in those new markets that you can align with. You're kind of doubling down on your brand efficacy, which is an annoying word, but efficacy is essentially like the I can do this. If they can, I can. And my favorite one is, why not me? And those questions when people start to ask those questions and associate them with your brand, you are onto a winner, because those kind of questions can change a person's life. So if all this is happening, your main priority is to remain relevant and significant, which means you're going to have to evolve eventually. means you're going to have to talk about new things. You're going to have to navigate pitfalls. You don't want to do a Bud Light situation. That was them trying to be too relevant. You don't want to do a Gillette, the best a man can get. That was too relevant. You want to be relevant to your audience and your market segment. So you want to understand stuff. You want to be significant with your brand efficacy. And then you want to make sure you're still solving a problem that matters. So say you were turned into a commodity or solved very cheaply with AI, you would have to evolve the company or you won't make it. So that essentially is how I would build a brand from scratch. It doesn't really matter. Any brand, in my opinion, it would work. It's a sort of rinse and repeat. Stamina, phase 1. Value creation, validation, verifiability and visibility. Systems, stage 2. Get viable. Understand how you talk about the brand and how the brand looks and feels. Get that sector aesthetic down, how you position it, how you talk about it, all the storytelling. Strategy. Where are you? Where do you want to go? Who's on that boat? This way, like this. And then virtues, we help you do this. Aspirational ideas that people want to associate with you and reinforce the values and the change you seek to make. If you're still here, watch this video because the algorithm knows better than I do.